Hello, today I'm going to replace a logic board for an iMac 2012 27-inch. I'm going to need a screwdriver, a T8 Torx screwdriver, a T10 Torx screwdriver, thermal paste, an iMac screen opener, needle nose pliers, and a suction cup, and a screw organizer. This iMac has graphical issues which prevents the display from working properly, and that is why we're going to replace the logic board, because the graphics processor is soldered onto the logic board. I'm going to remove the RAM from this back panel. There's a button that you can press here which allows the RAM door to be open. And there you go. Now there is the RAM right there. There's two sticks. To cut off the adhesive from the display, you will need a iMac screen opener, and this is useful because it has a wheel on the end which helps you cut through the adhesive and also prevents you from going more than 9.5 millimeters in, so you won't damage any antennas or cables. There's a guitar pick which you can use to pry off the glass once the adhesive is cut, suction cup so you can pull off the glass as well, and then needle nose pliers to take off the cables once the adhesive is cut. I would recommend to start on the bottom left side because there is a minimal amount of cables and antennas there for you to damage. Then you would go in, and then it would be best to go down and back up to cut all the adhesive, and then you can go up to the top corner. When you start cutting near the camera, do not cut near like 2 centimeters away from both sides of the camera because you might risk damaging the cameras. And then on this side you can bring it down, and then there are antennas here, so you want to be safe and careful so you don't damage them while cutting through the adhesive. And then you can bring it all the way down. Then you can use a guitar pick or the back of this iMac screen cutter and use it to insert it into the display and pry it off, but also using a suction cup to hold it into place while you pull it, so it'd be easier time to cut all of the adhesive. The pillow is here for making sure that the iMac's computer does not move while you're doing all this screen work. And I've already done the other side, so you can easily pull it off and reveal the insides. There will be 2 cables that have connected to the logic board once you pry the adhesive off, so you would need to unplug those before you are able to cut the rest of the screen off. And there's this is the display cable which is connected to the main logic board, and this far one back here is the display power cable. For the power cable, you need to press both of the sides of the plug and then remove the plug from the logic board. And then for the display cable, you need to raise this latch up and then slowly remove that cable. There you go. And then there. And then both cables are removed from the logic board. There is one last remaining piece of adhesive on the bottom of the display. This could be easily cut with the Apple display cutter. see the insides of the iMac. These two black things on the either side of the computer are speakers. This is the power supply, and this is the logic board, which we would be replacing. I would start by taking out the speaker, so you would have easier access to the power supply. The cable for the speaker is here, so you would want to unplug that and then route it so that before you unplug and disassemble the speakers. This cable here is plugged into the side of the board to power the board. It's a difficult cable to unplug, so you gotta have some force into it. And then this bottom plug here will plug into the bottom. I've removed both the speakers, the fan, and the power supply. It's now time to remove the motherboard. These are all T10 Torx screws, but they're different in length. And then there's this captive T10 screw inside a hole, which is pretty deep. This is the old logic board, and this is the new logic board we're going to replace it with. This is the iMac CPU and GPU heatsink. This over here is the copper plate for the graphics processor, and these out sections here are for the memory modules that are around it. And this copper plate here is for the CPU to cool it. And when you take out the heatsink, the CPU is usually stuck onto this section by thermal paste. There are vents on the back here, so the air from the fan can get through, as well as vents on the back to reach the back of the ventilation on the iMac. This is the CPU from the iMac. It is a Core i5-3470. For this generation of iMac, it can be upgraded to a 3770, which is an i7 quad-core. This uses LGA 1155 socket. To put in the CPU into the socket, which is here, I would recommend to open the RAM slot, so then you would have a better access to the socket. Then you would get your CPU, and then slide it down into the socket. There are two notches on the side of the CPU, which is on this side and that side, which makes it easier for you to help line up the CPU. And there's also a golden triangle, which corresponds to this place here, which also helps you line it up. To insert the RAM, you would need to pull on both these sides and lift up. Then you would get your RAM stick, and then you line up the notch with the notches on there, and then you slide it in, and then you push down. and then you lock it back in. You need to install the CPU backplate to get the heatsink onto it. So you have to go through the bottom, and there will be holes there, you can see. And then you gotta line it up through the holes. Once you finish cutting the adhesive from the screen and are ready to put on a new piece of adhesive to re-stick the screen back on, it's best to peel off all the old adhesive and then wash with some alcohol. So this one you just peel it off. And then, there you go. To clean it off, there's gonna be some adhesive residue, so it's best to clean it off with some isopropyl alcohol on a Q-tip, and then you just brush it across. Don't hit the iSight camera when you're doing this. And then you can let it dry. This is the back of the display. It also has some residue adhesives that you need to peel off. Here, then you can just peel off the adhesive. And then rubs with some alcohol. I have assembled all the components back into their places, and there were some hard parts like mounting the CPU cooler and GPU cooler to the logic board, because for the GPU mounting there's the bracket where you have to screw in on both sides, from the underside and the overside, to get the spring to lock into place. And for the CPU mounting, there's also a spring bracket which you have to put in a lot of pressure to get it into the right place. We're going to get the screen back on and then see if it turns on and works.